The Legend of Telo, Ants of the Fire. A novel by Jack Lee. Parts 21 and 22. Roaches and Discovered. Part 21. Roaches. The roach enjoyed eating the worker ant. It was not very filling, but eating workers that had outlived their usefulness was one of the perks of being assigned guard duty. He would enjoy a larger meal when he returned to the roach's nest where the ants had placed their findings for the day. He enjoyed the feeling of being able to return to his home at the end of each day with a full meal. He often thought back on the days before the king ant began paying tribute to his clan of roaches. The roach did not miss scavenging for his own food. His job had been easy from the start. He watched for any ants that could no longer perform their task and disposed of them. And he kept an eye on the transport lines to make sure they were operating as they should. He kept watch for anything out of the ordinary, but he had never noticed anything out of the ordinary. Until now. His eyes were drawn to two of the ants in the line. One was noticeably larger and carried her load with ease. The other workers struggled, but this ant didn't have to struggle at all. He noticed another ant behind her. Both of these ants were a different color than the other workers. They had a different walk, more of a cautious creep than the steady plodding of a defeated worker ant. He focused on the ants and tuned out the rest of the world until his partner startled him. Roaches always kept watch over the lines in twos.
"What is it that has captured your attention?"
his partner said.
"There are some workers on the line that appear out of place." "Yes, very curious, very curious. Perhaps they are from another nest, a rival here to steal or kill something?" No. These workers are the only tribe here. There are no other members of the species present in our dwelling. It is curious because the large one looks like the king's royal guard, but guard are dark in color. This one is red. What is the reason it is here? Perhaps the reason is of no importance. It is still an attempted infiltration, but it should be dealt with. Perhaps it is incorrect to state that there is no other tribe. Maybe this one can lead us to their nest. We can have two tribes of workers producing our food for us. Scavenging will then be unnecessary for generations. We will evolve. Let us examine the smaller one first. The larger one's size is probably of no consequence, but it is best to proceed with caution. Agreed. Always best to be logical. It could be a new breed we are unfamiliar with.
The roaches crept towards the line of worker ants. They flanked either side of the line and worked their way down until Telo and the attendant were about to pass their position.
Should we engage when they get close?
The guard asked.
No. As we previously stated, this may be something we are unfamiliar with. We do not need to be surprised due to our ignorance and lack of readiness. Agreed. Strength and preparation will ensure even the smallest of victories.
Part 22. Discovered. I know. Maybe they're on patrol or something. My nurse and I used to go on patrol all the time. Just keep your head down. Telo began to feel a rush of blood gush towards her head and her stinger. She felt like she had not been in a fight in years. She had killed the spider, but it seemed too far away, too buried in the past. Telo no longer felt right if she were not killing something. They are bigger than the cricket, Telo said, her voice shaking with excitement.
What's cricket?
Something I killed once.
Scared?
I know you're scared. I'm trying to think of what my nurse would tell me to do here.
Why she tell you anything here?
Because she had to. Telo reached the roaches and steadied her nerves. She walked between them and fought the temptation to look up at their towering bodies. All she wanted to do was grab one of them with her pinchers, feel its shell crack in her jaws, and stab the other one with her stinger to feel the release of her venom leaving her body. My nurse would tell me to be patient, Telo thought to herself. grab its head, stab its neck. Telo was almost past the roaches when they darted forward. She heard the attendant yell in pain and the sound of her body skidding across the floor. One of the roaches had struck the attendant from the side. The roaches dashed over to their victim. One held the attendant down with its legs. The other lowered its head to meet her at eye level. Telo didn't know what was happening, but she couldn't hold out any longer. She needed to fight something. She dropped the mouse flesh and pulled her antennae from her mouth. She sprinted across the room as fast as she could.
Who are you?
The roach yelled in the nurse's face. The attendant was surprised. She understood what the roach was saying. How did this monster come to know the ant language?
What are you doing here?
I'm working.
The roach looked at his partner. The ant had to be from another colony because their worker ants could not communicate in any way.
Eliminate the threat.
The roach holding the attendant began to press down on her body, trying to crush her old shell with his feet. He then felt a hard blow to his side, breaking his outer armor and knocking him over on his back. The other roach looked down at the attendant only to find Telo standing beside her. Telo narrowed her gaze. Surprise! Telo reached out to strike at the roach's head with her pincers. The roach darted backwards. Telo bit down but only felt her jaws scraping at the roach's face, ripping some of the roach's shell. The roach felt around his face with his mouthparts and his antennae. He felt his soft insides exposed from the slashes in his face's armor.
Where are you from?
He asked. Telo wasn't listening. The nature of her being overrode any sense of social pleasantries. She was not here to talk. She leapt onto the roach's head and stabbed her pincers inside the roach's wounds. She closed her eyes and felt the sharp tips of her mandibles chew and dig inside the roach's face. She rotated her abdomen and angled her stinger over the small crease between the roach's head and the rest of its body. She began stabbing down into the roach's neck with her stinger again and again. Telo stopped shaking as she dug her stinger into her victim's body over and over. She felt the roach's insides coat the tip of her stinger and felt his blood splash all over her body. The roach thrashed around trying to shake Telo off his head, but became docile as Telo's venom soared through his body. He stopped moving. Telo ripped the roach's head from its body and fell into the pools of liquid that poured from its neck. Telo drank and fed and bathed. She lost track of her surroundings.
Telo!
The attendant called. The other roach had regained its senses from its blow to its side and cast a shadow over the attendant. Telo, emboldened and strengthened by her kill, dashed at her friend's attacker and buried her mandibles between his eyes. She did not know her own strength. She jerked her body back, detaching the roach's head from its body. Telo dropped the head to the ground. The roach's antennae and his mouthparts convulsed and twitched. Its body walked around in circles in a relaxing stroll. "Why is it still moving?" Telo asked. The roach's head made a series of sounds and formed a few words.
Still alive,
the attendant said.
The other one.
The other roach's body was creeping towards them. Its head lay on the ground, making the same nonsensical sounds of the other dead roach.
Are they talking to each other?
The attendant asked. I don't know, but are you hungry?
Starving.
Then dig through that one's body. Maybe it'll stop moving.
Can't eat something that alive.
Why not? Didn't you have to do anything for yourself when you were outside away from the colony?
No. Not my place. Found dead things and plants to eat.
My nurse learned how to hunt and gather on her own. She was stronger than you. Telo sprinted through one of the dead roach's bodies, slashing and ripping its organs as she moved through its shell. It stopped moving. She looked at the attendant with annoyance and disgust. Her patience had run out. There. Eat.
Not polite. How are you going to get along with sister when we're the colony again?
Telo ignored the question and stormed through the other roach carcass while the attendant fed. She re-emerged to find the two roach heads staring at her. She tore away their antennae, gouged out their eyes, and chewed through the backs of their heads. She did not know what to make of a thing that could live without its head.
Don't eat all that creature. need to feed others,
the attendant said. We can't just bring them all over here. The roaches will wonder where the workforce has gone. They'll come out and kill us before we even know where the queen is.
Blend in didn't work. Get in line, follow where it leads.
The attendant noticed movement in the distance.
No. Too late.
Telo turned around and saw the lines of workers falling out of place and gathered in a large clump. They could see each other. They had not been blinded. But without their antennae, they could not perceive direction and communicate with each other. Telo and the attendant walked over to the mass and touched them on their heads and backs with their antennae. They stood still and stared at Telo. She was the first sign of their colony's life that they had seen since their enslavement. As long as they can see us, they can follow us, Telo said. The ants led the line of workers to the roaches' bodies. They swarmed the corpses and began eating. Telo looked towards the line and noticed that some of the workers had not seen them. They kept marching into the darkness, carrying their loads to some unknown destination. They'll wonder where the rest of the workers went, Telo said. They'll be out here soon.
What do we do with them? Can't fight. Not an army.
We can't leave them here. We'll use them as cover. The roaches will think that they lost their way.
Can't use sisters as shield.
Telo looked at the wounded slaves, starving and with their disfigured bodies. She realized that they would not be of any real use in the new colony, even if they were able to make it back outside. She felt her nurse's voice scratching in the back of her mind and crawling out of her mouth. We will use our sisters for whatever we have to use them for.
Even shield?
Yes. Even a shield. Thank you for listening to parts 21 and 22 of Jack Lee's novella Ants of Fire, The Legend of Telo, titled Roaches and Discovered. Our guest novelist Jack Lee is from the American South. He enjoys clean water, fresh air, and tall trees. He writes when time and sanity allow. The musical track in the background of the story is from the Free Music Archive. The track is titled Dusk by Thermochemistry off of their album Museum. The track is being used under an attribution, non-commercial, share-alike 4.0 international license. Please head to freemusicarchive.org for more of their music. That does it this week for Prose. Here's to hoping you enjoyed our first ever listener response of all time from Mr. Elliot Harvey. A dark little science fiction story that harkens back to the early days of the show, and of course this continuation of Mr. Lee's novel. Please join me again in 2 weeks' time for another episode of Prose. Though cheesy, I do continue to thank you, and to pray that you all love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is always stranger than fiction.